Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. So, the last session, as it was said, we'll try to just come with introductory remarks and come and try to tackle the issues through your questions and the way we are or you are looking at the issue. As I was saying this morning, when it comes to the overall understanding of our concept of human being, the relationship with God, the relationship with nature, the relationship with fellow human beings, this is all part of our understanding of being a human being, and then it has to do with what we understand as the psychological stability that you might talk about it. You might refer to it when it comes to our concept of well-being and psychological stability. From an Islamic understanding, and when it comes to this, there are two dimensions that are important here. Is this the way our psyche and the way our, so first, the way our brain, the way our psyche and the way we are dealing with the surrounding culture is part of the way we construct the psychological field. So we have to take this into account. But once again, there are things that are from a medical, objective way of how the brain works. So for example, in our discussion in the center, when we were talking about psychology, we had a psychiatrist who, psychiatrist? Huh? How do you say that? Psychiatrist. So it's when I'm starting to be tired, it's Arabic and French coming together. So it's a mixture. Anyway, you will find your way. So the psychiatrist who was there, who was a Muslim, who was saying, in fact, there is nothing to add in the discussion that we had before. We don't have to add Islamic here because it's the way the brain and the neurons and your nerve system is working. So at one point, this is the objective dimension that we have to deal. This is medicine. And we had psychologists saying that's not true. If you are telling us that there is no ideology behind the scientific approach, that's a problem, because there is something which has to do with the way you understand human being in itself. So the way you are going to deal in or so-called scientific terms with the human brain is connected to your understanding of the human being and the cultural environment and what it means to have a stable personality. That's the first question, because there are things that you cannot deny that sometimes it's a psychiatric reality which has to do with a medical take that you need with the brain and the way it works. And when it comes, for example, with some psychological disease, when it comes to what I was talking about, the true schizophrenia, for example, or psychotic attitude that you may have, or psychopathology, this has to be dealt with in a way which we need to be equipped scientifically. And this should not be dealt with in the way sometimes Muslim scholars and our cultures of origin are ending up saying, oh, it has to do with jinns and junoon and ruqya is the answer. And no, but this is serious, because we have it everywhere, in some countries more than other, and today we have so-called scholars just traveling around African countries or North African countries or even in Asia and playing with this, which is a way where it has an impact on the way we even deal with psychology and deal with mental diseases in a way which is about superstition. And the fact that there is a superstition in the whole thing, superstition is not only the wrong way of dealing with mental disease, it's also nurturing a sense of no responsibility, victimhood. I'm the victim, so I have nothing to do. I cannot do anything. It's coming from outside. So this nurturing a mentality which is, I'm not responsible, I cannot do anything, and the medical treatment, it's coming from the West. In fact, it's deeply rooted in the Islamic tradition that you have to come to what is an Islamic treatment. It's problematic because it means that you don't get the scientific approach, so at least you have an understanding of what is happening, and sometimes it's just a real mental disease, and you need a treatment. You need people to know how to deal with it, because with some people, there is one situation where you are making wudu, and when you end, you repeat it. It's as if it was not done. So this is something which is known also as a disease, and it's not, el-ain and el-jinn, and then at the end you make it as morally guilty while it's just mentally sick. So this, once again, is exactly what we are talking about, shifting towards a moral condemnation or moral assessment of something that needs to be treated. This is one, and this is one side of the equation. The other side of the equation, it has to do not with psychiatry, it's not as the medical way, is something which is in between medical sciences and human sciences when it comes to psychology. And this is where there is a great deal of mistrust towards psychology among Muslims. And you ask yourself why? Because, and the reductionist approach. Very often psychology is psychoanalysis. Psychoanalysis is Freud. Freud is a catastrophe. That's the reality. And it's not a joke. We came with the big shuyukh that we had. And we had this discussion. 8 people coming from all over the world with very high-profile psychologists listening to scholars, sheikh, saying, oh no, Freud was wrong. It's not all about sexuality. Even Freud is not all about that. And then the way to reduce psychology to a distorted understanding of psychoanalysis, that's not going to work. So here we also have to study much more things that are very important in all the theories that are coming from psychologists and the way they are dealing with therapies. We have to learn more about this. First, to never accept reducing psychoanalysis and Freud to sexuality and the inconscient, and everything has to do with the driving force of. He might have said things like this, but this is not the only thing that he said. Second, his student, who became afterward competing with him, Jung, is saying about the religious framework and about the way our psyche is working, things that are very deep and very close to what we might think as Muslims, if only we study. But we don't. Psychoanalysis. Shaitani. Not scientific. That's unacceptable. It's not acceptable because it's also something which is very interesting in the Jungian theory, is the way he go from the individual psyche to the collective and historical psyche, saying there is a connection between the collective, how do you call this in English? Inconscient. and consciousness. No, and consciousness. And no, not sub. No. Be careful. It's not. And consciousness. Huh? Is right? Is it? Yeah. So saying that there is a collective historical, so meaning that the individual is connected to a history, is connected to a culture, it's connected to symbols. And we say, yes, even in our concept of human being, we are connected to something which is beyond our individual by saying this things that is al-fitra in everyone. So there is a connection here. And the symbol is here. And so we need to study this and to take from this. So there are in human sciences, and there are parts that could be relying on scientific discovery and other things, and all what we know about the way the brain is working. For example, in neurosciences today, there are lots of things that are very interesting. I keep on repeating that I was very happy when I heard from neurosciences something that we don't agree about in the Arab culture and the Asian culture. Even in Bangladesh and in Pakistan, you don't like that. Which is in fact to say that apparently what we have been repeating is that women are more sensitive than men, which is wrong. The discoveries today, and this has been repeated, is in fact the men are much more emotionally driven than women by the way their brain works, but they have one distinction, is that they speak less. And they are introverted. While the women are stronger, but they speak more. And for some men, they speak too much. But that's not the question. The question is that they're expressing more, which is very important. Very important is that the way you express what you feel doesn't say anything about the power that you have on your emotions. And very often, because of the brain constitution, there are differences between the brains of men and women in the way it works. So this is very interesting. And I kept on repeating this, but thank you so much. So neurosciences are telling us things that are interesting. And I'm saying, even for myself, when I was dealing with some tafasir, trying to understand the Quran, you have some verses starting with men or starting with women, telling you something which is quite interesting. So when it comes to you have to protect yourself, it starts with men. قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنَاتِ after that. Okay? And then when it comes, so the first is protect yourself, and then the women are, it's equal, but we start with men as to the need for protection. In the other verse in Surah Al-Baqarah, هُنَّ لِبَاسٌ لَكُمْ, it starts with women. So they protect you first. You can't say now, oh, by accident. This is the Quran. This is the Quran. So it's not by accident that you have this link to protection, which is quite interesting. Why is it put that way? Why? هُنَّ لِبَاسٌ لَكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ لِبَاسٌ لَهُنْ. So they are first your own protection. And anyone who is transparent and sincere in what it means to live with his wife know how much this is true. That some sometimes are looking, anyway, I don't want to enter into this discussion because it's a bit too deep and I am going to miss my point. And some will say, yes, carry on. No, that's fine. Forget about psychology. No, this is psychology. So what I wanted to say here is that in the medical dimension, with science and scientific approach, we have to deal with this and to get more understanding how our brains are working, how this is connected to the environment. So this is one. Then you have the human science, and in psychology you have theories that are quite interesting. So you have psychoanalysis, you have behaviorism. These are very important things. So telling you the way you are going to behave is going to have on the long-term impact in the way you are thinking. This is something which is essential even in our way of dealing with our practice as Muslims. The way, in fact, because you have faith, you fast and you pray. Like because you are praying, it has an impact on your faith. So there is a connection between the action, not in the way that my faith is the source of my action, but my action has an impact on the nature of my faith. So this is something which has to do with psychology, and it's helping me to get this stability. And then also this understanding of human being. When you have in the Quran, الذين تطمئن قلوبهم بذكر الله تطمئن قلوبهم بذكر الله, those when they remember God, they get this inner peace. ألا بذكر الله تطمئن القلوب. This tranquility that we are talking about is a very important psychological factor. It's not only spiritual. Saying that your spiritual peace means psychological stability. Your spiritual peace means psychological stability. So it means that you enter into the world of psychology with this paradigm that it's not only a question of my brain and the way I deal with my emotions, is the way I deal with my heart, is the way I deal with my spiritual answer to the reality of my life. So we need to enter into this and to deal with what it means for us to have this well-being in psychological terms. In our discussion, at the end, it's we have one psychologist, who, a sister, she's coming from Britain, she was with us, and she was saying, you know, I am dealing with young teenagers and young Muslims in Britain. It's quite clear that in psychological terms, there are many problems. One of the problems is communication. So the fact that you are coming from a second generation, the way you communicate with your parents in a context which is not their context, where you are more equipped than your parent to speak, has going to have an impact on your psychology, in the way you define yourself. So the fact that which type of legacy are you bearing coming from them? This means that you have always a psychological approach which has to take into account the context and the environment. You have to be equipped. No psychology without knowing the environment. This is, by the way, what ethno-psychiatry was all about. You have to take into account the cultural background of the people you are treating. So if you come and you say, you know what, you go to some atheist psychologists and say, the angels are talking to me, you say, okay, that's a mental disease. This could end up with this. On the other side, the only thing that you have from the Muslims is a jinn. Where is this adapted understanding in the environment, in psychological terms, helping you to come with your background and to be also able to be listened to and get a better picture of what it is all about, the way your brain can work, the way your psychology, and the way you deal with all the factors that you have, your relationship to your parents, the relationship to your society, the way you are looking at the whole thing. This is psychology, and sometimes some of the theories that are coming, that were brought about and developed by people who have nothing to do with Islam, but could have lots to do with spirituality. So we need to. So if you look at what we are providing, if you feel bad in this community, and for me, 80% of the question that I get within the community has to do with psychological crisis. And when I'm talking about psychological crisis, I think that this minority or the victim mentality is a psychological problem. Lack of affection and communication within our families and within our community. Lack of communication has to do with unstable psychological state. That's the reality of it. So how are we going to deal with this? Judgmental. We keep on, many people, I'm coming here, say, my brother, salamu alaikum brother, salamu alaikum sister. Okay, are you sure? Are you sure we are talking about sisters and brothers? Or are we too judgmental within the community? Which means that we need also to have something which is, in spiritual term, how do we deal with being judgmental? But in psychological term, what does it mean? What type of impact do you have in the way you are looking? Because at the end, even when we speak about being somewhere and feeling good, there is something that you cannot avoid. To feel good, you have to feel that you have a value. That you count for somebody and you have a value in this society. Educating it gives me value. Give me the instruments of my own value, meaning my own independence. If you are not dealing with this, if you don't feel that you have a value somewhere, you are going to have this psychological reaction which is rejecting, isolating, or judging. Or even, by the way, feeling bad, not feeling at home, not having what? The sense of belonging. The most critical question of Western Muslims is not about you abiding by the law, is you belonging to the society, and this is psychological. When I'm saying to Muslims, are you able to say, Ya Qawmi to the British people? I say, sorry? Ya Qawmi, you are my people. You go out from here and out of East London, you go in the middle of the white middle class, say, Ya Qawmi, Oxford Street. Can you? Some can and others I'm doubting. Depends who is around. So, the question here, all these has to do with the big question of the psychological factor, and you have to deal with this. And to be able also to come to how do you define human being and how do you define, for us, it has to do, look, we have something to say about al-fitra. We have something to say about the relationship between our heart and our mind. We have something to say about our body. If the Prophet ﷺ is telling you in his time what you have to do to have a healthy life, it means yes. Socrates was right, and this was repeated by all the spirituality. If you want to have a sound soul and spirit, you need to have a sound body and in a healthy situation. So we are not here, you cannot neglect. The middle path here is take care of your heart, take care of your mind, take care of your body. وَأَعْطِ كُلَّ ذِي حَقٍّ حَقَّهُ. So your body has rights, and it has a psychological impact. So this is something which is part of the whole thing. What are we providing? Tell me today. What is coming from the Muslims as something which is a psychological framework and a psychological theory, taking from all, we say, الْحِكْمَةُ ضَلَّةُ الْمُسْلِمِ, the wisdom is the lost property of the Muslim. What are we taking from others? Superstition or rejection or reduction or ignorance. And one imam, once we were in Geneva, we brought a psychologist just to talk about the deep problems that she met within the community. Lots of, lack of communication, lack of affection, lack of, the main problem that they have within the family between husband and wife, lack of communication. Something which is essential for kids, the absent father. Exactly the same as we have in the West. All the crisis is, this is why I'm saying this in the books, and I repeat this, we have much more problem with men than we have with women. Contrary to what is said to us. The reality is this. So the old traditional state is creating a psychological crisis within men. And this is what the psychologists are saying when they are treating. And we are taking, we were talking about this, and the imam was here saying, you know what? I don't think that this is good what we are doing now. Because in fact we are creating the problems. What we have to say to the Muslims, there is one way to find the right relationship to God, you have to pray. Sorry? I know I have to pray. This is going to solve the problem that I'm not communicating with my wife, that my son are. Is this great? You know the simplistic, dangerous answer that you have? So it's even worse than that, because he dared to speak. The thing is that in our community, we are in a state of denial. We all know what is happening. Nobody talks about it. So this is something which is essential. How are we going to be at the forefront of this contribution is something which is important. Having said that, I think that we have to study much more about this, and even about everything which has to do with psychology and education. That's also something which is important. It has to do with the way you are getting knowledge. It's very important in the whole discussion. Now, last point, and I will stop with this, has to do with arts. You know, in the book about the Arab awakening, I was saying that beyond this crisis between secularists and Islamists in the Muslim majority countries, there are 5 fields where we need to have an answer. And that the political actors are not coming with the nature of the state, economics, social justice, education, the relationship between men and women. This is within social justice. And there is one which is important, which is culture and arts. Today, when we speak about globalization, we are speaking about 3 types of globalizations, or 3 dimensions. The first one is economic globalization. It's the global finance. The second is communications. Internet, this is the globalized world, is globalized or global connections. The third one is world culture, is the global culture. Wherever you go in the world now, in Muslim majority countries, in capitals, what you see is the westernization of everything. So we have to deal with this. Do you have, at the center of this world culture, being in London, in Britain, what is your take on culture? Do we have an alternative way of dealing with the world culture? Do we have some other priorities in the way we deal with culture and arts, especially arts? What is arts for you? It is entertainment, that some are reducing arts to entertainment, which is not this. When we are talking about beauty, beauty is at the center, and the Prophet ﷺ was loving al-adhan because of its beauty, which means that at the very essence of Islam, there is this reconciliation between substance and form. If you have studied literature, you know that there is something called substance and something which is called form. And poetry and even the Quran, some are listening to the Quran. They don't know anything about Arabic, but there is something which is beautiful. So many people going to Muslim majority countries saying, this adhan is just amazing. I don't know what he is saying, but it's beautiful. Beauty, Allahu Jamil yuhibbul jamal. God is beautiful, he likes beauty. Today, in the world of world culture and world communication, you need to know that this culture has an impact on your psychology. It has an impact on our spiritual stability. It has impact in the way we look at ourselves. So we need to have an alternative way of dealing with arts. And arts for us, it's exactly what happened. When people were using poetry to attack the Prophet ﷺ, say, ban it. When the same poet came to celebrate the Prophet, to celebrate the truth, he welcomed him. The question is not about art, it's about the way you use art to celebrate what? To elevate, welcome. To destroy, remove. So this means that we have to be selective in the world of entertainment and in the world of arts. This is what we need. If you look at what we are saying now, Islamic art, Islamic songs, it's against the same. Qualify it, it's Islamic. And we look at the great majority of, it's now becoming a bit better. But for a while, what was called Islamic songs were songs for children. You are talking to the children as if they are 8 years old. I'm Muslim, I'm happy. Okay, thank you. And you want this to compete with the professional highest level of production in arts and entertainment. To the point that we are not really producing arts, we are thinking about competing with Islamic entertainment, with Islamic anashid. For some, once again, you know the three main positions among the scholars: music is haram, or drums are okay, or music is halal. Depends how it's going to be used. You have the three. And anyone here who is saying music is haram is one opinion. And you know what I'm doing on my Facebook page? Sometimes I'm provoking a bit by putting some of the songs I like. And this is why I have all these shuyukh and mufti going say, A'udhu billah, this is haram. I say, I'm sorry, this is one opinion. One opinion. And for example, this discussion that I had with, at the time it was in 94, with Yusuf Islam, Cat Stevens, when I told him at that moment, why have you left? Allah gave you the skills, just what you were doing, and I wrote an article about him saying, now that he's coming mainstream again, not in the same way as he was before, but he's coming mainstream. I'm saying, you know, at one point, there was Yusuf in the previous Cat. And this is Cat now coming back to Yusuf. And Yusuf coming back to Cat, sorry. By saying, if you listen to some of the songs that he had before, it's completely Islamic. If you think that music is halal, so it's halal music. With the lyrics, what he was trying to do, it's a quest for an answer. He stopped this because he heard Muslims. And by the way, he needed this. He told me, and this is also something which is in the psychological side, he said, I needed to cut from that past. Now I'm strong enough to come back to it. We have to respect that. Not to be a fatwa, but to be a personal experience. Now, when it comes to arts and the way we deal with entertainment, I'm sorry, what we are doing is an alternative, imitative way of dealing with culture and arts. Imitative. We are, so for example, I keep on, you know, in Islam, if you look at the global picture that I was talking about this morning, don't you have a very personal way of dealing with day and night? Day and night. The way you deal, because art has to do with time, it has to do with space, isn't it? Night is very important. When you pray at night, you raise your voice. When you pray during the day, you are inward. Meaning that your attention is inward when you can be distracted. Your attention is open up when the night is around. Meaning that there is a spiritual take on this, isn't it? The way you are with space. You have to think about that when it comes to art, when it comes to expression and imagination. We need to give space to culture and imagination to be much more creative. There is a lack of creativity. And it starts with this relationship that we have with night and day. Look at what the Muslim organizations are doing. We have conferences, isn't it? Muslims are coming together. They are going to listen to lectures, mashallah. And we finish the lecture at 8 o'clock. And then start the Islamic evening. And the Islamic evening is Islamic anashid. And if you look at the way the people are behaving with the night coming, it's exactly the same as Saturday night, but it's a halal Saturday night. It's very dangerous because you are imitating the relationship you have with night. The last thing that you have to do when night is coming, when you gather Muslims, is introspection, is dua. Now you can put the entertainment during the day, in the afternoon, not during the night. Why are you imitating the way it's dealt with? Because in this world is less light and more freedom. You know that. Don't pretend, oh, I have no idea about that. You know how it is. You know what it means Saturday nights. The way we deal with time and space, we have to be creative in this. Can't we do something else? Instead of saying music haram, to integrate these dimensions in the way, and when you gather thousands of Muslims, the last thing that you have to do before sleeping is not to tell them, you know what, we can do as good as they do. We have our party. It's not going to work. This is completely alienating the way we deal with art, the way we deal with beauty. And I said this so many times. Please, you finish a lecture about spirituality, you want to finish with the dua, and say, hurry up. The anashid are coming. It happens so many times. Say, what's the point? What's the point to gather all these Muslims? This is where there is a spiritual revolution if just before sleeping, you end the conference by saying, this is the time now we have a spiritual elevation. And you know that is going to be beauty. This is the beauty of us. There is elevation. This is art. In fact, have you heard sometimes Muhammad Jibril and others when they are making the supplication? Don't you find it so beautiful and so moving? And with this, give me this. I want to sleep with that. Not, I'm a Muslim, I'm happy. I don't want that. This is why we have to deal with this. And this is within the global, within the overall understanding, with the what do you want with art is this liberating factor, giving space to emotions to be able to reach spiritual dimension, the well-being, feeling good. I need Muslims. With you, we need Muslims. We all need Muslims. Is there something that we can produce which is taking seriously the fact that I want to feel good? أرحنا بها. So give us something which is smelling something nice, smelling something good, hearing something good. Beauty. Beauty. Because I feel good. Because MashaAllah, because I acknowledge that He loves me through this, that I love Him through that. Through that process, where are the skills? Where are the Muslims who are skilled, who are able to do this, coming with an alternative and not repeating through qualifying arts and entertainment in doing something which is not what should be. We need also to have, once again, we need novels where it's not written. You know my dream, by the way, one day I will do that. I'm working on this manifesto, but one day I'm going to write a novel. Inshallah, before dying. I've been dreaming of this since I'm 20. So it's a long time. But I'm serious. I'm serious. I want to write a novel. Don't laugh at me. Anyway, here. The thing is, really this, is poetry, novels, literature, something which is, and not to be obsessed. You know what? Because we are Muslims, you have to put Islamic names, Arab names, Urdu names. No. Just to be, you are in a specific environment. You need to deal with this creativity and to push the people and to make them clear. To make it clear, and I will stop with this. You are not successful in life if you are a medical doctor or an engineer or a computer scientist. You can be successful if you are using your skills in anything which has to do with creativity. Creativity, your imagination. You have this, go for it, do it. Because we are, anyway, I will stop with that. Okay, that's fine. We can start with the question.